Thank you very much for that generous welcome, and thank you to all of you for being here this afternoon after high tea. Over 40 years ago, a series of unexpected but predictable events led to my becoming part of the Theosophical Society. It was in many ways like entering a new world, a world especially of ideas and questions. Ideas about how our cosmos came into being, how our solar system and Earth formed, what it means to be human, our purpose and meaning in incarnation even today, the meaning of a spiritual path, the inner side of service and sacrifice. Ideas and questions, some familiar and others well beyond my understanding, and especially today. I think in the Theosophical Society and engaged in this path, one learns to live with the questions. The freedom of inquiry, however, and the soaring thought, that is soaring for me, was like a lifeline extended without any pressure to take hold. Until then, I had not realized the need for rescue deep in the soul. One thread of that lifeline was the theosophical notion of wholeness, that both individual and community, and indeed our Earth, solar system, the universe itself, are all enfolded in a mystery beyond imagining. The Society's first object, to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction, was still radical in the late 1960s, even in America. Divisions based on race, creed, sex, caste, and color are still a major cause of conflict and suffering worldwide. The effect simply, I think, of wrong notions about the nature of our common life. In fact, in truth, remarkable individual differences emerge naturally and fully only when the common good is a more compelling vision than the idea of me and mine. Every major religion requires of its faithful a code of ethics meant to harmonize human relations, to center the body, heart, and mind in communion. In communion, something of this spirit of wholeness may be realized. Stories of the Society's founders and leaders have never failed to inspire, especially how apparent weaknesses and obstacles could be turned to the good. All who have given unselfishly for something noble, extended themselves to help others, no matter what their calling, have drawn from the same spiritual wellspring. Helena Blavatsky in The Key to Theosophy states, individuals in every age have more or less clearly apprehended the theosophical doctrines and wrought them into the fabric of their lives. These doctrines belong exclusively to no religion and are confined to no society or time. They are the birthright of every human soul. Those who have imagined theosophy to be a new religion have hunted in vain for its creed and ritual. Its creed is loyalty to truth, and its ritual to honor every truth by use. The most important of all the Society's aims, said HPB, are those which are likely to lead to the relief of human suffering under any and every form, moral as well as physical. And she continued, we believe the former to be far more important than the latter. Theosophy must put in practice the loftiest moral ideal, must strive to realize our unity with the whole of humanity and work ceaselessly for others. Dr. Stephen Holler, whom probably most of you know, has outlined the contours of two realities, different worldviews, which frame our intellectual and spiritual life. The consensus view, of course most popular, is held by the majority. Individuals, tribes, communities are seen as separate entities living in a stream of history. They share a linear view of time with clearly defined beginnings and endings. Events along the timeline are discrete, unique, and not repeatable. Individuals, of course, strive to create and to leave a significant imprint on this historical timeline. The consensus reality is heavily identified with the physical body and materiality. The soul or spirit may be attached, but is of secondary importance in everyday life. Life centers in the personal sphere, its survival, its protection, its satisfaction. Control or dominance over situations, other people, other nations, domestic animals, the environment, and nature is the accepted norm. An alternative reality, held by a minority, is embodied in a tradition whose origins are well beyond the reach of human history. In this worldview, the soul and spirit are primary. They are fundamental realities, however they may be named and described. Time is circular or cyclical, rather than linear. An emphasis is placed on timelessness, the experiencing of that which is eternal, boundless, enduring. The cultivation of wonder and amazement, a reverence for being itself, is central to the arising of wisdom. Analysis, dissection, the dismembering of living creatures, knowing by division and destruction, kills the sense of wonder. Only actions arising from the eternal, from the depths of spirit and soul, may endure. All attempts at reform and even healing, which originate in a divided heart and mind, are limited in their effect, as are all things conceived in the world of time. Aldous Huxley, in his anthology, The Perennial Philosophy, outlines something of the nature of this alternative reality, calling it a universal stream, scientific, religious, and philosophical in nature, a stream which underlies all systems of human thought and development. He calls it, of course, the perennial philosophy. But we have also called it the wisdom tradition, the ageless wisdom, or esoteric philosophy. Esoteric meaning something that we must realize within the depths of our own being. Exoteric is that which is the world of appearances. The Theosophical movement is a resurgence of this ancient worldview and approach to life. The term theosophy, which we all know, comes from the philosophers of Alexandria. It is a synthesis of the Greek theos, God, and the word which I love, Sophia, wisdom. Theosophy is literally divine wisdom. As Huxley notes, the perennial philosophy is primarily concerned with the one divine reality. But the nature of this one reality is such that it cannot be directly and immediately apprehended, except by those who choose to fulfill certain conditions, making themselves loving, pure in heart, and poor in spirit. He asks, why should this be so? And then answers, we do not know. But in every age, there have been some men and women who chose to fulfill the conditions alone, upon which alone this knowledge may be gained. And of these few, a few have left accounts of what they have experienced and have tried to relate in one comprehensive system of thought the given facts. Huxley continues, to such first-hand exponents, those who knew them have generally given the name of saint or prophet, sage, or enlightened one, or seer. Helena Blavatsky, working with such teachers advanced in esoteric studies, synthesized key principles with commentary in her wonderful, monumental work, The Secret Doctrine. Her dedication reads, "This work I dedicate to all true theosophists in every country and every race, for they called it forth, and for them it is written." She notes that in every age, under every condition of civilization and knowledge, the educated classes of every nation made themselves more or less faithful echoes of one identical system and its fundamental traditions. The following, which I have paraphrased somewhat for brevity, is from her summary included in the first volume of The Secret Doctrine, in the section which deals with Cosmogenesis. She begins by outlining the emergence of the doctrine itself. The Secret Doctrine is the accumulated wisdom of the ages, an uninterrupted record covering thousands of generations of seers. Their respective experiences were made to test and verify the traditions passed on orally by one early race to another of the teachings of higher and exalted beings who watched over the childhood of humanity. For long ages, these seers checked, tested, and verified the ancient traditions in every department of nature. This was the visionary science of great adepts, individuals who had developed and perfected their physical, mental, psychic, and spiritual organizations to the utmost degree. No vision of one adept, she says, was accepted until it was confirmed, checked and confirmed by the independent discoveries of other adepts and by centuries of experience. Next in the summary, the fundamental law, as given in the Secret Doctrine, is the one radical cause, an omnipresent reality, impersonal because it contains everything. It is latent in every atom and is the universe itself. The universe is the periodical manifestation of this unknown absolute essence, which is described as at once spirit and matter. And again in the summary, everything in the universe throughout all its kingdoms is conscious, endowed with a consciousness of its own kind and on its own plane of perception. The universe is worked and guided from within outwards, the whole cosmos being guided, controlled, and animated by an almost endless series of hierarchies of sentient beings, each having a mission to perform, and all agents of karmic and cosmic law. We are then drawn into the stream together of an enormous collective effort across thousands of years, an investigation which is ongoing even today. The sacred science, as it is also called, is the life work of an adept brotherhood, our lineage, a brotherhood who has developed spiritual powers through self-sacrifice and have, in their words, an immense love for humanity as a whole. Working unseen, out of the clamor of public scrutiny and superficial thought, they inspire individuals and groups anywhere and everywhere who are learning to work together in harmony for the benefit of all. Immersed in this great play of enormous diversity, intelligence, and vitality, our primary challenge now, according to these enlightened seers, is to remember that, in the words of Madame Blavatsky, existence is one thing, not a collection of things linked together. In the vast cyclic evolutionary scheme, the human stage is critical. The human being, we, are self-conscious, able to reflect on origins and unfolding, on hierarchy and harmony, purpose and meaning. But in the human stage, all meaningful reflection begins from a sense of unity. The cross is a universal symbol for two forms of alignment deemed necessary for the integration of spirit, soul, and body. The vertical is integration along the axis of hierarchy. We must be aligned with the unity of all kingdoms of nature, elemental, mineral, vegetable, animal, human, Devic, superhuman. Janine Miller, in the Vision of Cosmic Order in the Vedas, describes how Vedic seers created in their hearts mantras to communicate with the high devas, archangels, the Anichohans in Sanskrit. Their chanting flashed into the inner worlds as light-filled invocations, to which the Shining Ones responded. These sages envisioned humanity as mediating between Earth and the celestial realms, bringing the harmony of the heaven worlds to Earth. I love reflecting on the wisdom tradition, how it represents wholeness, how the adepts, with great effort and determination, with enormous care, really, have awakened themselves to the mystery. The unity of all life is a reality for them. They source their vitality, their power, their vision, their inspiration, their compassion from one undivided, boundless reality. And yet, they are of our own humanity, not extraterrestrials, not aliens, not disembodied entities, but our brethren. Madame Blavatsky emphasized that beings or hierarchies above and below humanity, that is, in the vertical axis, above or below us in evolution, have a different emotional and mental nature than we do. They have no sense of being completely separate entities, as when I say I am different, completely different from you. They identify more with their hierarchy, the collective within which they live and act. Superhuman beings are consciously unified with others. Impersonal and unconditional love is unfolding through them. Those not yet self-conscious, beings we might say below humanity in evolution, are more or less completely immersed in the collective. Some are beginning to have a dawning sense of individuality And this is greeted actually by us with great joy. The horizontal axis of the mystic cross represents integration. Oh, I wanted to say this also about the Davic kingdom. Just a little about Dora and Jeffrey Hudson. Dora Kunz, as you know, past president of the TS in America, and Jeffrey Hudson, both accomplished clairvoyants, did extensive studies of Davic life in various parts of the world. And they have written somewhat extensively about their observations and communications and relations. Their descriptions and Hudson's representations are a window for us into the vast range of consciousness and activities of our Davic brethren. And they inspire us to live in greater awareness and harmony with them. The horizontal axis of the mystic cross represents integration with the expanding life of each kingdom in service to its highest good within the whole, so that we not only become aware of the diversity within each kingdom, but we learn to enter into more nuanced relations. For example, we learn the subtle language of the animal kingdom, much of which is telepathic. We make use of our imagination, our image-building faculties, in order to communicate with both domestic and wild creatures. This is well within our abilities. We have in past aeons moved through this kingdom. We know it very well. And we are much nearer to our animal brethren even than we are near to the adepts. This is what we have been told. We are nearer to the animal kingdom than those who have, we even within our own human kingdom, have moved a little beyond our five sense perception. So, we learn the language of the animal kingdom, creatures of the earth, the waters, the sky. Instead of feeding on them or exploiting them for entertainment, pleasure, or profit, we observe and learn from them. As they live and evolve within humanity's influence, we help them to expand their consciousness and to become partners in a shared evolution. In turn, they help us understand or remember our own animal nature, and they help us to stay connected with the rhythms of nature deep within us and in all things. This is a poem by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests, in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And this from Sister Mary Georgian, whom I do not know. I didn't even write down the source for this, but I have always appreciated her words. We are who we are today because of all that has existed before us. We carry in our bodies and spirits the struggles and changes, joys and sorrows, loves and hates that have occurred throughout all time. We are called to live with the knowledge and awareness that we are a part of all that is, and that our decisions have an effect on the quality of life for all beings. We are called to live this connectedness that exists between all members of creation. We are called to put our hands upon creation and speak to it in words and touch, telling it how lovely it is because it cannot remember. We are called to remember loveliness for one another until each of us can remember, believe, and live in love. Enduring human health and happiness is never attained by the intentional, often mindless sacrifice of other sentient beings, nor is worshiping and sacrificing to the devas a means of human evolution. All beings are our brethren. We are of one family. Simply attending to the need before us with kindness, intelligence, and gratitude is the greatest help. Unseen helpers are always nearby. We need not call on them continuously, but always work, as has been said earlier by Robin, with gratitude in our hearts and the need also in the heart. We reach out to each other and we know that the unseen ones are near. The ideal of human progression and the perfection of the human soul in wisdom and compassion has been central to the Society's life and work from its earliest years. Our first object means being together in genuine friendship, where the well-being of another is inseparable from our own health and happiness. But realizing this deep inner bond requires the wisdom of a purified heart and an illumined intellect. Five-sense perception, we know, must expand into more wholesome and intuitive ways of knowing. An important part of this unity of body, mind, and spirit, body, soul, and spirit, this really supreme mystery of the inner life, is the midway position of the human soul, which partakes of both the mortal and the immortal nature. Manas, the human soul, the thinking principle, has the potential for entering into the life of the spirit as well as of the body. As self-conscious beings, we have the ability to choose an earth-bound existence or a way of life which reflects the high intelligence and freedom of the immortal, imperishable self. Identifying with the mortal personality is a serious obstacle to human evolution. It's a serious obstacle to everyone's evolution, not only our own. In The Voice of the Silence, Madame Blavatsky's last great work, a mystic work. Actually, she dedicates it to the few real mystics within the Theosophical Society. My sense is that the world of the mystical is the one in which our future is heading. This is what is emerging among us, the sense of the mystical, the esoteric, the unseen. So this work, The Voice of the Silence, is extremely important, I think. And it says, the hosts of human beings centered in the personal ego are described as broken-winged and bleeding, powerless before the great karmic forces which drive them again and again into incarnation. Yet few are moved toward understanding, soul healing, and freedom. She says this in The Voice: alas, alas, that all men should possess alaya, that is the universal soul, be one with the great soul, and that possessing it, alaya should so little avail them. Behold, how like the moon reflected in the tranquil waves, alaya is reflected by the small and by the great, is mirrored in the tiniest atoms, yet fails to reach the heart of all. The philosopher Jakob Needleman, in A Sense of the Cosmos, begins his book, which is a wonderful text here in our library, with an ancient Egyptian quote. "O priest, consider mankind, how the phenomena of life and nature are under the very eyes of them all. But they in their puny selfishness see only the few things of which they can make use. Very rare are those who seek the cause for its own sake. How many do you think there are of those who seek with their heart to divine the mystery? How many are those who, without arrogance, search for the power that moves and the law that is behind all this?" Needleman emphasizes how in the ancient traditions, meditation or contemplation, the practice of studying directly one's own inner life, the movement of thought and feeling, the emergence of the intuitive faculty, meditation and contemplation, knowing one's inner nature, was fundamental in the ancient traditions to the understanding and perception of nature. He notes, the literal mind is a mind out of contact with the whole human organism. A partial mind. It is as though I were in a laboratory, equipped with numerous refined instruments, but chose instead to examine everything with a cheap pocket glass. The literal mind, he goes on, is a hasty mind, compelled by fear or craving to affirm its own habits and associations. Such a mind which believes things are as they appear to it is simply what we in Theosophy call the lower mind. The personal ego, constantly hunting for ways to affirm itself, to persuade the person that he is the personal self. The great world religions have addressed the need to master the forces of this lower self, to banish that conception of the lower self from the center of our life completely. Consciousness is to center more deeply within, toward the eternal, undivided nature, aligning with the immortal self, and from that self, act through the lower vehicles. This again is from the voice. Before thou canst approach the foremost gate, thou hast to learn to part the body from the mind, to dissipate the shadow, and to live in the eternal. For this thou hast to live and breathe in all, as all that thou perceivest breathes in thee, to feel thyself abiding in all things in self. And then the heart of him who in the stream would enter must thrill in response to every sigh and thought of all that lives and breathes. All truly creative, visionary experience, all sense of communion is rooted in the immanence of the divine spirit within the human soul. The comparative study of religion, philosophy, and science must now be grounded, I believe, for us, in a more contemplative, reflective environment. We must learn the ways of meditative inquiry, because collective wisdom can only arise in an environment that's truly amenable to learning, and that environment must be fundamentally one of communion. We might think of this as a mystic state, but in fact, it is not. Because the only way we can know anything in the world today is to unite with it, to unify ourselves with it, and to allow whatever it is, whomever we're with, whatever it is we would like to understand, to give itself to us. So there is a commingling through the heart and through the awakened or opened, eager intellect. When we look at the golden stairs, most of you are familiar with those, that were given to Madame Blavatsky by her teacher. A simple and a clean life, an open heart, an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception. Then it goes on to give some other things that we need in order to be together harmoniously. And then a few more points about courage, about standing up for one's principles. And then ending with the very last, which is to keep before ourselves at all times the ideal of human progression and perfection, which the sacred science depicts. At all times being mindful of this sense of unity within which we are living now, if we can bring it about. Evelyn Underhill, I heard her mention, I think she was mentioned in one of the books that Quest is publishing on the Coming Closer to God something. I don't remember the title of the new Quest book. Evelyn Underhill is amazing. Her books I have totally enjoyed. She was born in 1875, died in 1941. She was a poet, a novelist, and a mystic, and wrote a number of classic books on mysticism. And one I really enjoy, it's simply called Practical Mysticism. And this is from that. It was published just before the First World War broke out. And she was concerned that it wouldn't be well received because mysticism at that time was somewhat popular, and she was afraid with the dawning of the war, it would be thought to be frivolous. But this was her response. She decided to go ahead. Mystical consciousness has the power of lifting those who possess it to a plane of reality which no struggle, no cruelty can disturb, of conferring a certitude which no catastrophe can wreck. Yet it does not wrap its initiates in a selfish and otherworldly calm, isolate them from the pain and effort of the common life. Rather, it gives them renewed vitality. Stayed upon eternal realities, that spirit will be far more able to endure and profit from the stern discipline which the race is now called to undergo than those who are wholly at the mercy of events. Better able to discern the real from the illusory issues and to evaluate the new difficulties and the new fields now disclosed. She dedicates this practical mysticism before the Great War to the unseen future. She reminds us that all of the worrying, all of the restlessness, all of the complications are happening upon the periphery of the mind, where it touches and reacts to the world of appearances. At the center, she says, there is a stillness which even you are not able to break. There, the rhythm of your duration is one with the rhythm of the universal life. There, your essential self exists, the permanent being which persists through and behind the flow and change of your conscious states. You have been snatched to that center once or twice. Turn your consciousness toward it deliberately. Retreat to that point whence all the lines of your activities flow and to which they must return. Acquaint yourself with its peculiarities and its powers. And then she quotes an Eastern visionary, "Take your seat within the heart of the 1,000-petaled lotus." And again from a Christian brother, "Hold thou to thy center, and all things shall be thine." This reminds me very much of Madame Blavatsky's emphasis on what she calls the heart space of silence, that place wherein we will find refuge in times of darkness. But she cautions us, even resting in that heart space of silence, we are not to lose sight of the battle. We are not to lose sight, I think, of our brothers and sisters and of the need before us. I would like to refer you also to the latest issue of Parabola, which is also titled, I was delighted to see it came out this spring, Alone and Together. It's a wonderful issue. And in it is an excellent short essay by Joshua Bettiger called Alone with Others. I want to read you a little bit from this, which I know you will enjoy. Togetherness depends on authentic aloneness. And then he offers a parallel. Jews are the people of the book, a people to whom words are particularly sacred. Yet the word would mean nothing if it did not arise from a developed and disciplined silence. To whatever degree we could hope to hear the word, we must cultivate the silence. So it is, he says, with the vision of the community. A community that does not value the necessity of the aloneness of each of its adherents, and that does not trust what arises out of that aloneness, will be an autocratic community, one held together by gravity and habit, but not by the living God. What Judaism insists upon is that the one who is alone return from her inner work and to water the root, not just taste the fruit. The root is the evolving tradition, the tradition of the communal or collective body. The one who goes up the mountain or into the desert for 40 days is honor-bound to return to share what she has received. And in addition, to know that the integration within the collective of what has been received will involve compromise, since compromise is the cost of belonging. We water the root when we return and attempt to put into form what we have formlessly received. Then he notes that sometimes our insistence, Judaism's insistence on togetherness, has caused folks to lose sight of the necessary inward journey that ultimately makes togetherness possible. And he says, perhaps in the naming of the primacy of community, the invitation to go up the mountain or into the desert has been lost. Nevertheless, he says, that invitation to aloneness is always there. Jacob was alone. In Hebrew, and I'm told this is pronounced levada, and this is, levada is aloneness. Jacob was alone when the angel found him by the banks of the river and wrestled with him until dawn, bestowing upon him the name Israel, one who wrestles with God. This wrestling, this naming, would never have happened without the levada, the aloneness that preceded it. In another well-trod tale, Moses comes down off the mountain where he has been alone receiving the Torah. He comes down despite the pain and misunderstanding that he knows await him below, should he try to bring back the teachings to the collective. But it's not just that Moses should come down the mountain. The very reason he is on the mountain is that he must come down. The act of prophecy itself is predicated on the experience of going into the place of aloneness and returning again. We learn from the experience of the classical prophets that to be alone is code. It is code for being alone with God. That is what is implied. And it is only when we are irrevocably alone that we realize that we are never alone. This is the leap of faith we take when we risk aloneness. Now we know that we're not all going to, very few of us will go up the mountain or into the desert. We can do that in our own way. But most often we must experience aloneness in the midst of community. And in fact, when we're on a silent retreat, almost all of us, I think, have had this experience, that we're in retreat and surrounded by others and moving in a rhythmic way with others. And yet, we have never felt so alone. And in the silence at the same time, we have never felt so close to our brothers and sisters in retreat. In fact, it's a little bit like a healing fast. You don't want the silence to break. Somehow, beginning to speak again creates divisions. You can feel it. So that the experience of aloneness in retreat, or aloneness when we are with a loving companion, a lover, spiritual friends, that aloneness helps us to realize even more clearly who we are as individuals. We're supported in our solitude, and we support the solitude of each other, recognizing the need for aloneness in order for the togetherness to be complete and deep. This is from our international president, Rada Bernier. If we would ennoble the world, it is not enough to read, to talk, to theorize. It is extremely important to pause, to linger, to look, to be thoughtful, to assimilate significance, beauty, and truth. In other words, learn to be meditative. If one views a beautiful sunset, what does one have to do? Nothing. Only open oneself to the glory of it. That is what we must do in life. Learn to contemplate and to wonder, for there is nothing to be achieved by the personal self. For one who realizes this, life becomes very simple. He can say with Jesus, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." We have too many aims, too many objects to achieve, she says. The result is a mess. If we gave more attention to understand this great marvel, which is life in all its complexity, depth, beauty, and purity, there would be nothing to be frustrated about, no reason for conflict. Let us all be messengers of peace, truth, and a new way of life, which is not achievement, but understanding. In ending this time together, I would like us to listen to the words of O Hidden Life in silence. I'm going to pause between the phrases, and then in the silence afterward, I would like to finish by reading for you something from Joy. It's a part of a little pamphlet written on this mantra in 1976, published by Adyar. It's quite beautiful. So please close your eyes. And let us reflect together on each phrase of this wonderful universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may all who feel themselves as one with Thee know they are therefore one with every other. Surely what is intended in this mantra is the realization that when the feeling of oneness is present, a recognition of the oneness with the supreme reality, which is life and light and love, then there follows upon that recognition the realization that one is inevitably united with all other creatures. For how can one be one with the Supreme and remain separate from, distinct from, all others who are equally rooted in the one reality? It is truly a reaffirmation of the entire creative process in which we and all of life are immersed. A reaffirmation that we hold within our power as self-conscious units of life, the ability to perceive life whole and splendid. This is the vision we can send, shining out over the whole entire world. The vision to which we can give wings and voice and form. It is the vision which can recreate ourselves every time we chant the mantra and recreate our world, transform our world. Such a vision alone can bring about a new consciousness in the world, a consciousness of unity, of brotherhood, peace and harmony, wholeness and holiness. When we repeat these few simple lines, either alone or together, we invoke the one reality to manifest itself anew. And this, surely, is to make whole and make holy all that is in the universe about us. No more wonderful act could we perform.